If you want a quick little clinic on how to build an NBA roster from basically scratch, look no further than Oklahoma City. Since trading Paul George to the Clippers back in the offseason of 2019, the Thunder have embarked on one of the league's most visible and, from the looks of it so far, successful roster rebuilds in modern history, as they've already turned Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the primary player coming back in the Paul George trade, into a first-team All-NBA performer, and have supported that acquisition with an absolutely absurd stockpiling of draft picks that will convey throughout the remainder of the 2020s. In fact, at this current moment, the Thunder have a whopping 35 picks over the next 7 years, 15 of them being first-rounders, and they've managed to acquire these selections thanks to shrewd trades that saw them either trade away valuable players that didn't fit their timeline, like Chris Paul in 2020, or take on bad contracts that contending teams want to get rid of, like the most recent example of taking on Davis Bertans' contract from Dallas in order to move up in the 2023 draft and take Cason Wallace at 10. The results are far from determined, but right now the youth movement looks to be off to a pretty flying start. With a legit star in Gilgeous-Alexander already attained and under contract through 2027, the Thunder have at least 3 other guys that each have reasonable all-star ceilings in Josh Giddey, who they took in the 2021 draft, and Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, who were both lottery picks in the 2022 draft. If you were to take a look at every team in the league, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a young core as good as Oklahoma City's, and that is a scary development, both for the rest of the NBA and, believe it or not, for the Thunder. Let's go all the way back to the 2007 NBA draft. The Portland Trail Blazers had the first pick and were on the clock and decided to take Greg Oden, a dominant 7-footer from Ohio State, which left the Seattle Supersonics to select Kevin Durant, a pretty good consolation prize at number 2 overall. The next year, in their final draft as the Sonics, the team took Russell Westbrook with the 4th overall pick, adding to their already established young core with Durant. And finally, in 2009, the Thunder added the final piece of a trio that would go down in NBA history as one of the brightest young cores of all time, selecting James Harden with the 3rd overall pick. In Durant, Westbrook, and Harden, the newest NBA team had its building blocks, and the Thunder quickly emerged as one of the better teams in the league. In 2010, a 21-year-old Durant led the team to a 50-win season while averaging 30 points a game, with Westbrook showing his playmaking ability and Harden coming off the bench to score a little under 10 points a game as the team's 6th man. That year's Thunder team lost to the future champion Los Angeles Lakers in the first round, but they did show an uncanny maturity and a tightly contested 6-game series. The next year, OKC was even better, with Durant having established himself as one of the best players in the league regardless of age, Russell Westbrook taking an all-star leap, and Harden improving from his rookie year as well. The Thunder won 55 games and made it to the Western Conference Finals, but ultimately ran out of gas against the Dallas Mavericks, who again went on to win the NBA championship. In 2012, the progression once again proved to be linear, with the Thunder grabbing the 2 seed in the West and making the finals while knocking off the Spurs, Lakers, and Mavericks in the playoffs, which represented the last 3 Western Conference champions. It looked like a symbolization of a changing of the guard. The West would now seem to run through Oklahoma City, and while they did lose in the finals to the Miami Heat in an uninspiring 5 games, hope for the franchise had never been higher. But then the Thunder ran into an issue that seems to hinder all small market teams.
Money!
With James Harden on the verge of a new contract and the Thunder wanting to be flexible with Durant and Westbrook about to make major money, Oklahoma City decided to trade Harden to Houston, prioritizing keeping guys like Serge Ibaka and Kendrick Perkins for a lower price. And while they did come close a few times, Oklahoma City never got back to the finals. Durant left for his next chapter in 2016, and Russell Westbrook, while loyal to the Thunder, wasn't a perfect fit next to Durant by himself. Still, all of Durant, Harden, and Westbrook went on to win MVP awards throughout the 2010s, and to this day, that young Oklahoma City core is perhaps one of the biggest what-if stories in NBA history. So now it's 2023, and while the current group in OKC isn't as promising as that generational core assembled 14 years ago, it's still pretty damn good. And by all notable measures, it's already ahead of schedule. Last year, the Thunder entered the 2022-23 season with a projected win total of 24.5, which represented the 5th lowest in the NBA, only behind the Spurs, Pacers, Jazz, and Rockets. In what was meant to be another tanking year, especially with the preseason loss of Chet Holmgren, the Thunder managed to surpass all expectations, winning 40 games, beating New Orleans in the 9-10 play-in, and then ultimately losing to Minnesota to fall just short of reaching the playoffs. Still, the season was a positive, and it validated the progression of Oklahoma City and how they've been operating. Based on the previously mentioned win totals, the Thunder were actually the team that exceeded their expectations the most, winning 15.5 more games than projected, with the Sacramento Kings being the only other team in the league coming close to that mark. So now, as we enter the next phase in Oklahoma City's rebuild, the young Thunder look to be on a path towards becoming a legitimate playoff team as early as next season. So let's take a closer look at this young core and see just how well they can operate together. Any discussion of the young Thunder has to start with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The recently turned 25-year-old guard is coming off a season that saw him average career highs in points per game and field goal percentage, and his efforts actually put him in some rarefied air. Per StatMuse, Gilgeous-Alexander joined Michael Jordan as the only player under 25 to average over 30 points and 5 assists per game on greater than 50% shooting for an entire season. And when you factor in his defensive impact as one of the few players in the league last year to average over 1 steal and 1 block per game, you get one of the best players in the world. Listed at 6'6", 180, Gilgeous-Alexander's offensive game is difficult to describe. Lying at a unique intersection of shiftiness, craft, and speed, Shai is capable of getting shots off at any time and from any location. As a ball handler, he has a great understanding of pace and how to keep defenders off balance. He makes quick and sharp movements that enable him to glide past defenders and get to the rim, and because of his deft touch, he becomes nearly impossible to stop once he creates an initial advantage. Gilgeous-Alexander shines when it comes to finishing around the basket, and while he only converts around 58% of his shots at the rim, his ability to use a variety of ball fakes, pivots, and spin moves opens up a lot of opportunities for him. But Shai's most efficient scoring region is actually around the free throw line and elbows, where compared to league average, he converts around 7.5 percentage points better at 53.5%. Shai is awesome at using ball screens and punishing big men who hang around the basket, and he's great at finishing with awkward angles and launch points, whether it be floaters, pull-up jumpers, or glidey runners. Because of his herky-jerky style, Gilgeous-Alexander also makes a living at the free throw line. This past season, Shai actually finished 3rd in the league when it came to free throw attempts per game, only finishing behind known free throw merchants in Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid. And what's additionally impressive is that he converted on 90.5% of these attempts, meaning that Shai actually got around 10 points per game just by getting fouled, which has long been a trait of some of the league's most efficient scorers. In fact, this season Shai became the first player since Kevin Durant in 2010 to average more than 10 free throw attempts per game while knocking down over 90% of them, leading to his continued emergence as one of the best and smartest scorers in the NBA. While he isn't a knockdown three-point shooter, he hits enough at around 34% to keep defenses honest. His shot form is somewhat unique as he loads up and fires from his shoulder on what looks like a push shot, but there's enough touch and efficiency there to look past any abnormality in his technique. Shai has also grown tremendously as a passer, as his pace control and shiftiness helps him find open teammates after creating advantages off the dribble. He averaged 5.5 assists this past season, which is certainly a high-end mark, but the true passing savant on this team hails from down under, and his name is Josh Giddey. After being taken 6th overall in the 2021 draft, Giddey has already emerged as a high-efficiency playmaking guard who can set the table for more talented teammates like Gilgeous-Alexander. At 6'8", Giddey is a jumbo-sized guard who excels at seeing over the top of defenses and finding teammates for open shots. Despite not being legally able to drink yet, Giddey showcases remarkable poise when operating the Thunder offense. His 6.2 assists per game led the team this year, and perhaps what's even more impressive is that he only committed 2.8 turnovers per game as well. What's also unique about Giddey's passing is that his reads can come in a variety of different situations thanks to his height and fluidity with the ball. He regularly makes passes out of standstills in the in-between areas of the floor, using his size and length to find cutters and shooters at a multitude of angles. Giddey can also run pick and roll and pass on the move, using his elite change of pace to hit rollers on time and create rotations within the defense to hit open kickout passes. In transition, Giddey is also a force, as he is one of the better rebounders for his position, as he grabs close to 8 per game. And this allows him to grab and go on the break and capitalize against defenses that aren't yet set. Giddey also thrives as an awkward scorer, as he's really good at using deliberate and tight movements to finish at unique angles around the rim. He can also pull up for floaters and mid-range jump shots as well, and while he's not as polished scoring the ball as his backcourt running mate, and he can stand to improve even more as an outside shooter, Giddey does enough in this regard to keep defenses honest, which allows him to capitalize even more on his passing vision and feel. Adding to Oklahoma City's arsenal of talented young guys is Jaylin Williams, a 6'6" swingman out of Santa Clara who impressed as a rookie, especially during the latter half of the season. Williams finished 2nd in Rookie of the Year voting behind Paolo Banchero, and ended the year averaging 14 points per game on better than 50% shooting. Seen as one of the best ball screen operators in the 2022 draft coming out of Santa Clara, Williams has been able to adjust his game to play alongside other ball-dominant players in the NBA. He's proven his worth as an efficient standstill shooter, hitting close to 36% of his three-point attempts this past season, And he's also shown a real knack and ability when it comes to cutting without the ball. It feels like there were countless times when Josh Giddey was able to find Williams on backdoors or basket cuts, and having this type of cutter who has the intuition of Williams gives the Thunder a bevy of additional options offensively. Williams' adaptability makes him an incredibly valuable weapon that OKC can deploy in a variety of ways. Defensively at 6'6" with a plus wingspan, he can guard multiple positions and make timely rotations, and offensively, you can put him anywhere on the floor and be confident in his ability to deliver positive results. He can run pick and rolls and get downhill and finish at the rim. He can create separation and knock down step back threes. You can obviously use him as a floor spacer and cutter, as mentioned earlier, and he's also a very good passer in a secondary role as well. Williams fits in well with Gilgeous-Alexander and Giddey because he's another guy who can handle the ball and make good decisions. In an era of basketball where decision making and reading and reacting is at an all-time premium across every positions, Oklahoma City has made this a priority in building its roster. And with 7-foot big man Chet Holmgren coming into play this year, the Thunder have seemed to double down on that approach. Despite not being able to play at all during his first season in the league, the hopes for Holmgren still remain high. The former number 2 overall pick in 2022 brings with him the potential to be one of the most unique players in the NBA, as his size combined with his fluidity and skill allow him to fill a variety of roles offensively, while also being a stout rim protector defensively. You've heard of the stretch 5, but Holmgren is much more than just that, as his handle and basketball IQ makes him a formidable force on the perimeter offensively. Chet can create his own shot in half-court settings, hit threes off the catch, or shake defenders and get to the rim, and that's a skill set we haven't really seen a whole lot of in the league. But again, Holmgren is the perfect encapsulation of what the Thunder value. Guys who at any size can dribble, pass, and shoot effectively and make good decisions. His offensive uniqueness aside though, his biggest value add to the Thunder, at least in the immediate sense, is going to come on the defensive end. As a 7-footer, Holmgren has quick feet and can play in a variety of ball screen coverages, while also having good enough instincts when it comes to shot blocking. The Thunder were in the middle of the pack when it came to rim protection this past season, so adding Chet, who was one of the best rim protectors in college basketball during the 2021-22 season, will certainly give the Thunder an added boost in this area. And so far in Holmgren's limited NBA involvement through this year's summer league, he's been extremely encouraging, as he's averaged around 16 points, 10 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks per game in 4 appearances. While he does still struggle in terms of his physicality at times, the overall trend with Holmgren has been positive, and given how great he was as a prospect coming out of Gonzaga, it's reasonable to expect that he can reach similar outcome levels, if not greater ones, as guys like Giddey and Williams. Outside of these 4 players though, the Thunder are still kind of loaded with young talent that can help fill a variety of roles. There's obviously Luguentz Dort, who at 6'4" is one of the best and most disruptive defenders in the league. There's the other Jaylin Williams, who thrives as a big man passer and glue guy. There's Isaiah Joe, who has quietly become one of the more dangerous shooting specialists in the NBA. Spark plug scorer Tre Mann. Kenrich Williams is another strong-bodied wing defender. Oh, and don't forget about Ousmane Dieng, who the Thunder took in the 2022 draft with the 11th overall pick. Oh yeah, and then there are guys that they recently added, like 29-year-old EuroLeague MVP Vasilije Micic, versatile defender Usman Garuba, and former Kentucky guard Ty Washington, who tore up the G League this past season. Speaking of Kentucky guards, there's also Cason Wallace, who I personally love as a prospect given his dogged defense and ability to play either guard spot, and even second-round pick Keontae Johnson has had some impressive moments in the summer league as well. Oh, and of course there's Aleksej Pokusevski, if you're still into that. The Thunder have so many intriguing young guys that they'll actually have to cut a few of them before the start of the season, and opposing teams are already paying close attention to what OKC ends up doing. Simply put, the Thunder are loaded with young and exciting talent, and with a boatload of picks coming down the pipeline, I'm pretty sure they have the most hope-inspiring future in the NBA. But it's important to remember that the same thing could have also been said in the aftermath of the 2012 finals, when the Thunder had 3 future Hall of Famers on the roster who were all under 21 years old. And obviously, that didn't end in any championships. And undoubtedly, links can be made between that generational core from over a decade ago and this current one. The Thunder have so much talent that it will be hard to keep all of it long term, especially with the new CBA limiting roster flexibility after expensive players are signed. And it's likely that they will have to deal with another Harden situation in the future, whether it be trying to manage salaries and keep the group together, or trading one of the core 4 for more future assets. But even with the ghost of the early Thunder looming, this time around feels different. It might be all the picks they have coming, or the seemingly endless supply of promising prospects, or the aforementioned 4 legitimate star or star candidates that they already have on their roster, but at the end of the day, it just seems like the Thunder have too many good players to fail, and that is always a good problem to have. Thanks so much for watching, and give me your thoughts below.